One of the questions I get asked the most is, as a solo woman, full-time RVer, what are the things that I do to make sure my rig, the truck, the chassis part of my RV is maintained regularly to prevent things like breaking down out in the middle of nowhere and mechanical issues. A lot of you want to know how to maintain a rig. A lot of us didn't grow up learning how to tinker on trucks and cars, right? Some of us did, but not all of us. And so a lot of this might be intimidating to a lot of people, especially women. And so today I'm going to go through the 9 things that I do. It's a simple 9-step checklist, and I'm going to show you how I maintain the truck part or the chassis part of my Class C RV. Are you ready to get started?
There ain't nobody gonna do it for you. Got to mind your own.
Hey all you beautiful friendly people, otherwise known as friendlies. My name is Carolyn and I live solo in an RV full-time for almost 4 years now. And this is my rig, Phoenix. It is a Class C Ford chassis, F450 V10 6.4 liter engine. Living in it full-time requires very regular maintenance on it to make sure that it stays running and takes me to the places that I want to go. And so today I'm going to take you through the 9 things that I do to make sure my RV stays strong and healthy, and that hopefully I can head off problems before they arise when I'm out here in the middle of the desert or the forest or wherever I end up. So it's super easy. I want to take away the guesswork, and I want to help you feel a little less intimidated by what goes on in here. And so first thing I'm going to do is kind of show you the layout of up here. I'm going to show you the things that you're going to need to know about living in an RV, and then I'm going to show you how to maintain them. Okay, so first let's just kind of show you what's up here. Okay, so the main things that you're going to want to know about for maintaining your RV and making sure that it continues to run smoothly: oil, transmission fluid, power steering fluid, your coolant and antifreeze, windshield wiper, because it helps to be able to see, so your windshield wiper fluid, your battery, and your air filter. So those are the things that I'm going to show you in the engine part, and then we're going to talk about tires in a minute. So let's get started. I'm going to show you the lay of the land up here. Under the hood of your RV or van or whatever you're driving might look a little bit different. The layout might be a little bit different, but basically you should pretty easily be able to find everything underneath your hood that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so the first thing that everybody knows about is your oil. It's really important to make sure you don't run out of oil, because you'll freeze up your engine and you'll kill your engine if you run out of oil. There's your oil dipstick down here. And then over here is where you fill up your oil. So if you need to put oil in, this is where you can do it, okay? Your transmission fluid is here, and that's just a dipstick that comes out. Your washer fluid is right here, and you can put water and windshield cleaner in there. Of course, your battery, and then your power steering fluid. And again, it might not be in exactly the same place in your rig. What I recommend is finding your manual. Just don't be afraid to get under here and look around. Pop the hood right now. Well, watch this video first. But as soon as you're done watching this video, go out and pop the hood and familiarize yourself with what is underneath here. It's really good for you to know, like, just basics, like what oil looks like, what power steering fluid looks like, what your transmission fluid looks like, you know, so that when you do go, or if you ever do have issues with your RV, you kind of have at least a baseline knowledge of stuff if you break down or if you're talking to a mechanic or whatever. All right, so your power steering fluid, this is your coolant. Well, no radiators anymore, now they're in plastic, but this is my coolant and antifreeze, and your brake fluid, okay? So that's the lay of the land, and now I'm just going to walk you through and show you how to check all these things and make sure they stay healthy. Oh, and your air filter. Your air filter is in here, super easy. Yours might look different, but we'll get to that. All right, so the first thing we're going to check is the oil, because that's the one thing that everybody knows you really need to keep an eye on. I think of most things in a healthy vehicle, that is the thing that you might run out of the most. If you have an oil leak or if you're burning a lot of oil, you shouldn't be if your rig is healthy, but you do need to keep an eye on your oil. So this is your oil dipstick. Pull it out. This is pretty long. Okay, you'll see there, it's a little dark, but it doesn't look bad at all because I do maintain my oil on a regular basis. I get oil changes about every 5,000, sometimes that stretches to 7 or 8, but I try to get an oil change about every 5,000 miles. They used to say 3,000, they don't anymore, and I prefer to wait a little bit if I can, just for environmental reasons, putting all that oil, you know, garbage oil spill and using oil. So I usually go over 5,000 miles, and I think when did I get this changed last? I don't know. It's probably been about 2,000 or 3,000 miles, and so you'll see it's kind of brown, but it's not super dark. If it's really black and really sooty, and I'll show you here. So you want to wipe off the dipstick, and you'll see that's a nice brown color. If it's super, super inky black, then you need an oil change. It shouldn't be super black. That means it's old, and that means all the sludge from the oil is going through your engine, and that's when you start having engine problems. You really need to keep your oil clean so that it oils everything in there and keeps everything running smoothly. The more crap you have in there, i.e. the darker it is, the more wear and tear on your engine. So it's really important to make sure you maintain your oil. In order to properly check it, you're going to want to wipe off the dipstick and put it back in. Kind of let it sit for a minute, get it all coated around the dipstick, pull the dipstick back out, and you'll see I'm full. So I'm not burning any oil. I don't have any oil leaks, which is really, really good. I'm really happy about that. And yeah, and it's a good, healthy, used oil color. I mean, that's what color it should be. When you first get an oil change, it's going to be a lot clearer. It's going to be a lot cleaner looking. And sometimes it can be kind of hard to see on the dipstick, but this is a good color. I know my oil is healthy. So that's number one, checking your oil. It's always a good idea to have extra oil on hand. I always have at least 2 quarts of oil on hand, just in case I forget to check it and I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I'm like, oh, it's been 3 months and I'm due for an oil change and I haven't checked it in a while. I like to have at least 2 quarts on hand so that, just in case, I don't know, you never know. It's always good just to have a little bit extra on hand. And it's also really important to know what kind of oil your rig takes. Mine takes 5 weight 20, but normally they put 5 weight 30 in it. It's not a huge deal. The 5 weight 20 is for optimal performance. I should put 5 weight 20 in it when it's available. I usually just go to speedy oil change, but sometimes I put 5 weight 30 in it too. So know what kind of oil, the weight, the viscosity is what it is that your oil takes. And viscosity, I think, is the thickness, and that certain engines are built for certain viscosities, and that means your engine will run smoother. And so it's important to know that before you go get your oil change, because they will ask you if you have an older rig and it's not marked on the top of the oil thing that you put oil in, you might want to look online for your year and model of RV. And it might also, if you don't have the owner's manual, it might be a good idea to download it, to go buy one or download it onto your computer. Most of them are available online, and it's really good to have your owner's manual. Just if you have any questions, it's just to troubleshoot things. I really like having my owner's manual around so that if something goes wrong or I'm not sure of something, I can just pull out the owner's manual and find out what I need to know. So, all right, so that's oil. Okay, next we're going to check the power steering fluid. So that's full. And it's important also to notice the different colors of all your different fluids, just so if you have a leak underneath, you can kind of know what you're going to look for. So the power steering fluid is a little orangish, and you'll see in a minute the transmission fluid is also red. Oil, of course, is black or clear, but that's that is your power steering fluid. You definitely want to make sure that's topped off. So for your antifreeze, your coolant reservoir, for your radiator, this is what regulates the temperature of your engine. So those of us who have lived in cold temperatures think of this as antifreeze, right? You put it in so that you don't freeze, so that you can start your rig up in the morning when you're going to work or whatever. Well, it's also a coolant. I bought one that is already diluted, so I don't need to add water to it. But it is really important to make sure you have the right ratio of water and coolant in here. You do not want to put just water in your radiator or in your coolant system unless it's absolutely necessary, like if you're stranded on the side of the road and you have no other choice, because this also acts as a coolant. This has a higher boiling point than water does. So on a hot day when you're going uphill in Arizona and your engine is working really hard and it gets super hot, if you only have water in here, you're going to boil over and you're going to overheat your engine, and then you're going to end up stranded on the side of the road. So it's really important to make sure you have coolant, and it's really good idea probably to buy the pre-diluted coolant so that you don't have to guess how much is in there, how much coolant do I have to add versus water, although that's pretty easy. If you add a cup of coolant, you add a cup of water to make sure you maintain the ratio, because you definitely don't want this to boil in hot weather. You also don't want it to freeze in cold weather. So it's really important to make sure that this is not only maintained at the proper levels, but it's maintained at the proper coolant antifreeze / water ratio. Does that make sense? All right, so next we're going to do the transmission fluid. But in order to properly check your transmission fluid, you need to start your engine. It needs to be heated up a little bit to make sure you get the proper reading. So first I'm going to start my engine, and then we'll check that. We'll let it run for a couple minutes. Okay, so the engine's been running a few minutes, so it's warmed up, probably not a lot. It was really cold out last night, down in the low 30s, and it's pretty chilly out now. I had to put my jacket on. But it's been running for a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and check the transmission fluid. First, you're going to pull it out. They say to use a lint-free cloth. I'm just going to use a paper towel, wipe it off, put the dipstick back in. Let it sit for just a minute. Let the transmission fluid kind of coat the dipstick. All right, and you can see that? One side of the dipstick has an H, the other side has a C. That means hot and cold. And they say that you're supposed to check the transmission fluid when it's heated up a little bit. Of course, you want to make sure before you turn on the engine and come out here, make sure your engine is in park and the emergency brake is on, because you're underneath the hood and you don't want it to go. That would not be good. So before you do that, before you start the engine, just make sure of that. But they do say it's best to test it hot. And you'll see mine goes way above the H on the hot side, so I'm good. I don't need any transmission fluid. But if you do check it when it's cold, you've got the C on this side. If you do need transmission fluid though, hang on, let me turn off the engine so you can hear me. I'll be right back. If you do need transmission fluid, it goes directly where the dipstick comes out. That's how you fill your transmission fluid. Unlike your oil, which I don't know if I told you, when you fill your oil, the oil does not go where the oil dipstick is. There's a separate receptacle over here for your oil. Your oil never, as far as I know, all the cars I've ever had, your oil never goes where the dipstick goes. There's always a separate receptacle. But your transmission fluid goes directly in the little hole that your dipstick comes out of. And in this RV, it's pretty easy to get to. It's right up here on top. In Matilda, it was way, way, way down. And so I had to buy a long funnel to get to it. And so depending on where your transmission fluid is, like this one could just use a regular funnel, but I needed this for Matilda, my other RV, because it was way, way down, and even just a regular funnel, I couldn't get the transmission fluid in. So there you go. There's your funnel in your transmission fluid receptacle. If you do need to fill up any of your fluids, if they're low, don't assume that they need a quart or 2 quarts. Add a little bit at a time and then check it. And if you need more, add a little bit more and then check it. You don't want to overflow any of your receptacles. That could cause damage, if not at least a mess. You've got transmission fluid or oil leaking all over your engine, and then when it gets hot, when you're driving, it's going to smoke and smell and just not be good. So don't assume It needs a full quart. Just add a little bit of a time, at least until you get used to how much you're using on a regular basis and how much it takes. I don't think transmission fluid takes any more than a quart usually. I'm not sure because I've never had to fill it up completely. But if you need to put in more than a quart of transmission fluid, you've got issues and you might need to go get that checked out. You've probably got a leak. The other thing to make note of, if you saw that, your transmission fluid is red. So it's good to know, like I said, what color your fluids are. In case you've got something leaking underneath, you can identify what's leaking. And take it from me, I learned that the hard way. Stranded on the side of I-5 in California with a pile of red underneath my rig. Yeah, pretty interesting, huh? But yeah, my transmission blew up. But so transmission fluid is red. Good thing to know. All right, I'm just going to replace the dipstick. Oh, the other thing is if you do need to put oil inside here, be careful about where you lay your dipstick. Be careful about getting any contamination inside that hole for the transmission fluid or your oil or your brake fluid or your power steering fluid. You want to make sure your receptacles stay clean. Any dirt or grit that you get in them could cause problems with how your motor runs, how your transmission runs. You want to keep everything as clean as possible. So I'm not going to just set this down in the dirt and then stick it back in the dipstick receptacle. You just need to make sure everything stays clean, free of dust, free of dirt. They even say lint free, so free of lint. One thing about keeping your engine working as long and as efficiently as possible without problems is just keeping everything clean. Okay, let's move on to brake fluid. So next we're going to check our brake fluid, and mine is a see-through container, so it makes it super easy. There are even max fill lines on both sides, so I can see that it's just a little bit below the max line. I could top it off if I wanted to. Sure, why not? Since we're doing the video. And you use usually the .3 brake fluid, but you want to double check what your RV, van, car, whatever it is that you're driving takes. Don't assume you know what it takes. Either look at your owner's manual to find out for sure, or just look up your make and model number on Google, you know, Ford E450 2004 brake fluid, and it'll tell you what kind of brake fluid you need. So you can see that this is stored in my compartment in the back, and so the top is dirty. I'm going to clean off that dirt before I open up the lid and dump it in, because I don't want that dirt getting into the receptacle. So I'm going to go ahead, since there's a little bit in here. If you don't have the see-through receptacle, what you probably have is a dipstick on the other side of the lid, just like we had on the power steering fluid. That'll show you what the level is. All right, and I'm going to go ahead, top it off. There we go. And I'll probably go out and buy another container of this the next time in town, just to make sure I have it around just in case I need it. And that brought it up to the max fill line, so now I'm good. That's the brake. Next, we're going to take a look at the air filter. And if you're in a smaller van or a car or a minivan, it's going to look a lot different than this. But this is mine, and it's usually, you can tell, it's right on top of the engine because it's filtering the air that goes into the engine to make sure you're not getting dust and particles and crap going into your engine. Your engine needs air to operate, to run smoothly, but you don't want garbage, literally like garbage and sand and dust going in your engine. So that's what the air filter does. So it's super easy to take off. This is just a clamp. This is just a clamp right here. So I undo the clamp, kind of move it aside a little bit. This right here is what basically is bringing the air in, and it's just got a couple clamps on it. You just pull that out, pull this out. See how easy that is? And voila, you've got your air filter. Mine is fairly new because it had to be replaced after I did my PCT hike this summer. My RV sat for 2 months and the mice got to it. So no, the the dryer sheets did not work. The mice got to my air filter, and when I went in to get my oil change, and I normally just go to Speedy Oil Change, they check your other fluids, of course, because they want to sell you stuff. So I want to tell you a trick for this. What they do is they check it, they pull it out, they show you that it's dirty, and they say you need a new air filter. Well, you know what? You can just shake it out. It's just a paper filter, and I really suggest checking it yourself so that you don't, you're not changing it more often than you really need to. I thought about that even after they changed mine out. They showed it to me. It was covered with junk, and they said the mice had gotten to it, but I don't know if the mice had really eaten through it because I didn't look at it myself. I just saw all the stuff on it and saw that it was dirty, and I was like, yeah, go ahead and change it. Well, it may not have needed changing. It might just needed to get shaken off and cleaned. So if you know how to do this yourself, you can go in, you can shake it off. Like I said, it's just paper, so just kind of go like that. So you might be able to extend the life of your air filter, or just change it yourself. Go to, an auto parts store and change it yourself. Speedy Oil Change or something like that might charge you a little extra. Of course, they're probably going to charge you a little extra. I mean, why else would they be doing it if they're not going to mark it up? So it's super easy to change yourself, so you don't have to fall prey to the higher prices that some of those quick oil services are going to charge you. So super easy. Check your air filter when you're up here doing your RV maintenance. Next on the list is our battery. We're just going to kind of eyeball the battery. You're going to want to look at the terminals to see if they've got any corrosion on them. If they keep getting excessive corrosion on them, you might need to get it checked out. You might need a new battery. There shouldn't be excessive corrosion, like the bubbly green stuff that you see. There shouldn't be. A healthy battery should not show that, and if it does, you might just want to get it checked out and find out what's going on with it. But you can also keep it clean with a wire brush. And to do that, so my battery has a shutoff here, so I can just lift this up and it automatically just disconnects my battery, so then I can get in here and I can clean things off. If you don't have this shutoff switch, put that back in before I forget. If you don't have that shutoff switch, you're probably going to want to disconnect the terminals to get in there, but disconnect both before you start getting in there with the wire brush, just so that you don't cause a spark or you don't shock yourself. And when you're disconnecting a battery, you always want to disconnect the negative first and then the positive. And when you're connecting a battery, you want to do the opposite. You want to connect the positive first and then the negatives. And I know it seemed counterintuitive to me at first, because you think negative is ground, right? Black, negative is ground. And before you hook up the positive, you think it needs to be grounded. When you're connecting it, you connect the positive and then you connect the negative. Got it? So you want to clean your terminals if you're seeing corrosion. And if you want, while you're here doing your maintenance on a regular basis, you can use your voltmeter to see how healthy your battery is. And it might be a good idea to keep records of this. If you're doing maintenance once a month, you might want to write down what your volts are month to month to month, but you might want to do it like if your rig has been sitting a day. Make sure you always do it after your rig has been sitting a day. If one month you do your RV maintenance, like within an hour of you parking your rig, your battery reading is going to be very different than if you've been sitting for 4 days. So whenever you do your maintenance, you might want to do it after you've been sitting a day or 2 days, so that you make sure that you're comparing your battery voltage apples to apples, right? In equivalent timetables of when it's sitting. Does that make sense? Because your battery is going to still be charged after an hour of driving, so you're going to get a higher reading than you would after it's been sitting a few days. So those are just a couple other things that you can do to maintain your RV, and just so that you know what's going on under here. I think more than anything, it's important to just get familiar with this, get comfortable with this, so that not only to prevent getting taken advantage of when you go to get things fixed, but if you even sound a little bit like you know what you're talking about, if you know your rig and you're able to say, yeah, well, yesterday my volts were at 12.3 and today they're at 11.4 or whatever, if you're able to at least sound like you kind of have a clue what's going on under here, number one, you'll be less likely to be taken advantage of. Number two, you'll be taken more seriously. Yeah, definitely. I think so. All right.
The last thing we want to do up here before we close the hood is do a visual inspection of all our hoses, the clamps around the hoses. You just want to look for anything that might be drying out, that might be tearing, that might have cracks in it. Double check the clamps around all the different fittings, make sure they're still tight. And anything, this again can really go a long way toward preventing a disaster, a breakdown because of a hose or a busted belt, got chewed through or got worn out. So just do a visual inspection of everything under the hood, and if anything looks like it's about to break or get worn out, then it's a good idea to get it in to be seen by a mechanic. All right. So I think we're done under the hood. Let's go check our tires.
All right, the final thing on our checklist today for RV maintenance or van maintenance, if you're living full-time on the road, are your tires. It's really, really important for gas mileage, for safety. If you want to prevent blowouts, if you want to prevent just tire damage when you're out in the middle of nowhere. I was in bum F Yukon after the Dalton Highway, and two duals went flat at the same time, and I had to call roadside assistance. There was really nothing I could do. I didn't have two spare tires, so I had to call roadside assistance. Sometimes you can't, prevent it. I suppose after the Dalton, I could have had my tires checked, which probably would have been a good idea, but sometimes it just happens. If you want to minimize the risk of having tire problems, you're going to want to check the air on your tires on a regular basis. And I have this tire gauge, which is really nice. I just bought this about a year ago, and it works really well. I really like it. I will admit that with duals, it can be a little challenging because you've got the valve stem. They can be really hard to get to. And I mean, I have this and check my tires, but honestly, the valve stems on the other side, I can't even get to them. So when I go to get them checked again, I will get valve stem extenders on them so that I can check them myself on a regular basis. Everybody who's ever worked on my tires says the valve stem extenders always cause problems. They end up causing leaking, and so your tires lose air and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you do the best you can with what you've got. And so I'm going to show you how to use this. I've got one valve stem here. It's the long one. Oh, see? Yep. And it's got a tear in it. I just cut my finger with a little bit. So these things really do, they're very problematic. But this one is the long one. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, I can see this one. This is the back tire. And first you want to reset it. So you push the button to reset it. And then you just stick the end on it. There you go. And I'm at 70 pounds, and I should be at 80. I just filled them up to 80 like a couple weeks ago. So I had a feeling I had some slow leaks in these tires, and indeed I do. I can see it. If you don't know what the PSI of your tires should be, you can look usually on the inside of your door, on either the frame of the truck or the frame of the door. You should have a sticker there with information about the tires that you should have on this rig, and it'll also tell you what the PSI should be, and mine should be 80 and it's 70. And so I need to, I had a feeling both of these tires, they're not that old either, but I do a lot of crazy driving. So that's the inner dually. It's only at 70. Now let's check the outer. Go ahead and reset it again. You can hear it. That one had a cap on it. Okay, that one's about 70. That one too is about 70. So I know I need to go in and get my tires checked. They might have slow leaks. It might have something to do, that one, with that tear in the valve stem.
You also want to do a visual inspection of your tires while you're doing all your maintenance. You just want to look at the walls of the tires for any tears, any shreds, any cracking. Tires that are old that might sit in the sun, especially, the tread might look good, but you might start getting cracking with the rubber drying out. So it's a good idea to also do a regular visual inspection of your tires. Also, of course, the tread. You want to make sure your tread is good. And you see my tires are all pretty new. If you start seeing low tread, it's time to get new tires. If you start seeing cracking and any tears or anything like that, then you're probably going to need to get that replaced or repaired.
You might just want to get into a routine of doing everything once a month or once every 2 months. I think that the first year you're out, you're going to want to just probably do once a month until you get used to how your rig runs and how often you really need to maintain and check things. So err on the side of caution the first year, check everything once a month. Then the longer you're on the road, you might realize you only need to check everything every 2 or 3 months, and then, you know, adjust your schedule accordingly. But yep. Such is the life of a full-time RVer.
And finally, the last thing on our list of things to do to maintain our RV, car, or van properly is a fuel system cleaner. I drive a lot of miles. I drive a lot of hard miles. So I make sure I do a fuel system cleaner probably at least every 10,000 miles. On the bottle here, it says use it every oil change or 4,000 miles. Do it as often as you feel you need to. This keeps your fuel system clean. It helps save gas. It helps with just a lot of the gook that they put in gas these days that could clog up your fuel system. This just helps to clean it out. So this one bottle is good up to 35 gallons. I have a 52-gallon gas tank. So what I'll do oftentimes is I'll wait until my tank is pretty empty. I'll dump in a bottle of this and then I'll fill it up with super premium, not fill it up, but I'll put in 35 gallons of super premium gas. This says one bottle contains 3 times by weight the amount of cleaning agents compared to 35 gallons of the leading premium gasoline. So I don't know. I always put this in and use premium gasoline, so I'm getting super ultra extra clean. And you know, the last time I did it especially, I really did notice a difference in like how my RV felt afterwards. A full 35 gallons of premium gas with this cleaner, and then I think even the next time I filled it up, I went ahead and put premium gas in it, and it really felt like smooth. I could really feel it had more power, and my rig was happy. Phoenix was happy to have some good premium gas in her. And I did get my fuel filter. A lot of you asked in that video about my RV troubles when it was the fuel pump issue. A lot of you kept saying you need a fuel filter, you need a fuel filter. I did not need a fuel filter. My fuel filter was replaced coming back from Alaska. I actually had to get towed in Yukon, where was I? Not St. George, I can't remember. One of the big towns on the Alaska highway in British Columbia, I believe, or Alberta. Anyway, Capone was dying and I had to get towed. It was a bad day. Luckily, it was just a fuel filter and it only cost literally, it only cost me like under $200 to get the fuel filter replaced, and the tow I think was pretty much free with my roadside assistance. But so my fuel filter was replaced like fewer than 10,000 miles ago. So my fuel filter should be in pretty good shape, and it's just really good to clean out your fuel injection system and your fuel system at least every 10,000 miles, or if you want to do what they say, every time you get an oil change and every 4,000 miles. It'll keep things running smoothly. One thing to look out for is if you really start noticing that you're chugging going uphill. That's what happened to me when I was coming back from Alaska in Canada. I had no power going up a hill. I couldn't even get my gas pedal to the floor. I couldn't even get my rig to go above 35 miles an hour going up this hill. And I was like, no, no, no. And I was pushing it. And then my transmission light went on. Something just I screwed it up. I shouldn't have pushed it as hard as I did. And basically, you'll know the longer you're on the road, the longer you pay attention to how your rig or how your van feels as you're driving it, you're going to start knowing it felt clogged. It felt like something just couldn't go. Like something was it felt clogged. And that's exactly what it was. My fuel filter was clogged, probably with gook. And so if you do this on a regular basis, though, you can probably prevent that, or at least prolong the life of your fuel filter, maybe even your fuel pump, maybe. I don't know. And that's the last maintenance tip on the list for today. Just make sure you clean your fuel system every once in a while. So there you have it. 9 simple things you can do on a regular basis, once a month, once every 3 months, to make sure your RV, van, or car stays running and working efficiently and reliably for your RV life or even your sticks and bricks life. You want to make sure your car keeps going. And these 9 things are just something super easy anyone can do to make sure everything stays working and stays healthy. The last thing that I'm just going to talk about really quickly is getting tune-ups. They say these days most cars don't need a tune-up for the first 100,000 miles. So I think as long as you maintain your vehicle, if you're putting hard miles on it, just pay attention to how it's running, the sounds it's making, get things checked out when they come up. You should be good without getting a tune-up for 100,000 miles. That is definitely something at 100,000 miles. I would recommend taking it in, getting it tuned up, getting everything checked from head to toe to see what kind of condition everything is in. It's always just good to know. When I was getting ready to go to Alaska, I took Phoenix in, had her inspected head to toe. It was good just to know before I left what was in good condition, what might wear out soon, what I might be able to plan or prepare for down the road. Knowledge is power, so it's always good to know. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, I hope that you will subscribe below. I'm a solo woman out here learning as I go and sharing with you the lessons that I learn. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm really happy you're here. I appreciate each and every one of you, your kindness and your friendliness. I'll see you next time. In the meantime, be happy, be free, and be kind. Mwah. Take care. Happy driving.